They say you can tell who someone truly is by how they treat you when they no longer need you. The last time I stood in that marble kitchen, sunlight pouring in through the oversized windows, I was wearing a simple blouse and holding a cup of tea I hadn't touched. Across from me sat Eleanor Grayson, my former mother-in-law, perfectly composed in her cream suit, pearl necklace gleaming like armor. "You must understand," she said, voice cold as the china in her hand. "We all make mistakes." Thomas did the right thing moving on. I didn't answer. "You were never one of us," she added, as if clarifying a final detail. "You married up. We both know that." I remember nodding slowly. Not because I agreed, but because I needed the conversation to end. Divorce papers were signed the day before. Quiet, clean, discreet. Just the way the Grayson family preferred to handle things. No scandal, no drama. Just an erasure. Thomas had already started dating someone new, someone his mother called better suited for the family's lifestyle. They didn't say it outright, but I was the wrong background, the wrong resume. My parents owned a small grocery store in Ohio. I went to community college. I didn't know the right wines, the right designers, or the right way to pretend. So I left their world. No fight. No begging. Just a quiet goodbye and a smile that burned behind my teeth. That night, I drove back to my apartment, the one bedroom I had before marrying Thomas. I sat on the old couch, kicked off my heels, and opened a notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote a single sentence. "Let them think you disappeared." Then, in bold underneath, "Build something they can't ignore." No one noticed when I took the job washing dishes at a small Italian place in the East Village. That was the point. The restaurant was family-run, tucked between a dry cleaner and a bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, chip tiles, temperamental ovens, handwritten menus. But it was real, honest. And it was where I started learning everything. I didn't use my full name. Just Lena. I didn't tell anyone about my past life. No one knew I used to host charity luncheons with Manhattan's elite, or that I once flew to Paris for a weekend tasting. Here, I was just another quiet pair of hands who showed up early and stayed late. I watched. I learned the flow of a kitchen, the quiet panic of the rush, the delicate rhythm between servers and cooks, the small rituals that built trust. I paid attention to how food was plated, how ingredients were ordered, how the chef tasted everything before it left the pass. In the mornings, I took online business classes. At night, I stayed behind to scrub floors and ask the prep cooks questions. I didn't need anyone to notice me. I needed to understand everything. Within a year, I launched my first catering company, small, nameless, under a rented license. No branding, just word of mouth and dishes that spoke for themselves. I used a friend's address, paid everything in cash. The first wedding I catered was for 30 people in a barn upstate. They cried when they tasted my lemon risotto. That's when I knew I had something. I built slowly, never in my name. Different LLCs, different fronts. I wore a hat when I made deliveries. I let others take credit publicly. I was building a machine, a brand that didn't need a face. Because one day, that face would walk right into their world again. And they'd never see it coming. Once the engine started, it didn't stop. The catering led to a cafe. The cafe led to a second, then a third. Each one under a different name, different aesthetic, different story. I built them like characters in a novel. The rustic bakery in Vermont with vintage teacups, the sleek modern brunch spot in Brooklyn, the coastal seafood bistro in Santa Monica. No one connected them, except me. I chose the locations carefully, not by foot traffic, but by opportunity. I sought out struggling restaurants, ones with loyal followings but poor management. I bought them quietly, through shell corporations. I kept the original chefs when I could, treated them like partners, not tools. People noticed the food, not the woman behind it. That's how I wanted it. One of the properties I acquired was a French restaurant on the Upper East Side, once elegant, now fading. Its reputation had slipped, reviews scattered. But I remembered it well. Eleanor Grayson used to host her bridge club there. She used to call it our hidden gem. I bought it through a company registered in Delaware. Renovated the kitchen, brought in new talent, trimmed the menu back to classic perfection. Within 6 months, the place was full again, lines out the door, photos and magazines, reservations booked for weeks. Eleanor went back without knowing. She posted about it on social media. Finally, someone restored this place to what it was meant to be. I saved the post. My network grew faster than I expected. Influencers tagged dishes they didn't know I created. Critics praised visionary teams I had assembled. Investors sent offers. I turned them all down. This wasn't about exit strategies. This was about arrival. And I wasn't done. Not yet. The email came on a quiet Thursday morning. Subject line, private gala dinner, invitation only. It was from one of the Graysons' philanthropic foundations. A tradition Eleanor started years ago. Annual gala, fine dining, select guests from business and society. A celebration of legacy, taste, and control. The dinner would be hosted at Maison Blanche, my restaurant. The irony almost made me laugh. I read through the details slowly. Eleanor had requested a bespoke menu, a private chef for the evening, and the opportunity to honor culinary excellence. It was her way of placing herself at the center of attention, to remind others of her taste and influence. I read the final line twice. Chef's name not required on menu. Client prefers discretion. Perfect. I confirmed the booking under the restaurant's front office. As always, no mention of me. The team handled everything as they usually did, with elegance, precision, and silence. But I began preparing behind the scenes. I reviewed every detail personally. The layout, the floral arrangements, the wine pairings. Every plate would tell a story, subtle references, a nod to the past, a final course that would echo with memory. And then, the centerpiece. I ordered custom place cards, each one handwritten, calligraphy on soft cream paper. Except one. Eleanor's. Hers would be blank, until I wrote my name on it in front of her. For days, I thought about how the moment would feel. Would I tremble? Would I hesitate? But when I practiced the words in the mirror, there was no bitterness left. No vengeance. Only truth. I didn't want to humiliate her. I wanted her to see me. Not the woman she dismissed, but the woman who built everything from the silence she left behind. It started with a meeting. One of my restaurant groups, the Coastal Bistro brand, had been gaining national attention. A group of investors requested a sit-down in Manhattan to discuss expansion. Among them, Charles Grayson, Thomas's cousin, and a junior partner at the Grayson family's real estate firm. He walked into the room confidently, clearly unaware of who was about to greet him. I sat at the head of the table. No hat, no shadows, just me. Charles blinked, paused mid-step, and offered a slow, uncertain smile. Lena. Yes, I said. We've met, though not under this name. The others introduced themselves. We shook hands. I kept my demeanor calm, professional. Nothing about me asked for acknowledgement. I had prepared the pitch like any other meeting. Projected numbers. Real growth. Clean books. They were impressed. Charles kept glancing at the documents. You're the majority owner of the Salterra Group? He finally asked. I am. His jaw tightened. Does Eleanor know? I smiled. Not yet. A beat of silence followed. Then one of the investors said, We'd like to bring this before the foundation. They're seeking new partnerships for the gala series. I leaned back. You're already booked, I said. I watched realization dawn on Charles's face. A slow, dawning horror. Like the air had been knocked from his lungs. You're the chef, he muttered. No, I corrected softly. I'm the architect. There were no outbursts. No drama. Just stunned faces and quiet agreement. Because money doesn't care who builds success. Only that it's real. The meeting ended with handshakes and congratulations. But I knew what was coming next. He'd tell her. And for once, I wouldn't have to say a single word. The night of the gala arrived draped in elegance. Black cars, glittering gowns, soft jazz drifting from the string quartet in the corner. Maison Blanche glowed like a lantern against the Manhattan skyline, every inch curated to perfection. I watched it all from the kitchen at first, dressed in black, hair swept up, calm and invisible, just like I had been for years. Eleanor arrived fashionably late, of course. She wore silver, her signature color, and walked in with a grace that demanded attention. Guests flocked to her. Smiles, air kisses, laughter. She looked around the room and declared, Finally, someone understands real taste. She didn't recognize the hostess. Didn't recognize the art I had personally chosen. The wine I had selected. The flavors designed to echo the dishes she once turned her nose up at. But others did. Whispers moved like a current. And then the final course was served. A delicate dish, saffron risotto with preserved lemon and seared scallops, one of my signatures. A dish that once, years ago, she dismissed as provincial when I made it for a family dinner. This time, she praised it aloud. I need to meet the chef, she said, dabbing the corner of her mouth. I stepped forward then, crossing the room calmly. Heads turned. Murmurs grew. Good evening, I said. I'm the chef. And the owner. She froze. Her eyes searched mine, then dropped to the name tag on my coat. Elena Hartman. Her mouth parted slightly. No words came. But she didn't need to say anything. The silence between us was enough, filled with all the things she once said, and all the things I no longer needed to hear. Applause began somewhere behind me, small at first, then growing. A toast was made in my honor. Glasses raised. Eleanor lowered hers. And I turned away, not in victory, but in peace. The next morning, the headlines were subtle but pointed. Anonymous culinary empire revealed at NYC Gala. The woman behind Maison Blanche breaks her silence. But the articles weren't what mattered. What mattered were the emails from chefs I admired, from investors who once ignored me, from young women asking how I did it. What mattered was the quiet pride in my staff's faces and the simple, handwritten note from our pastry chef. Thank you for showing us how to rise without noise. Eleanor never reached out. Thomas didn't either. But I didn't need them to, because I'd already moved past the part of my story where their names carried weight. In the weeks that followed, we opened 2 more locations, one in Charleston, another in Seattle. I was invited to speak at a conference. I declined, not out of pride, but because I was exactly where I wanted to be. One afternoon, I sat at the back of my first cafe, the one with wobbly tables and mismatched chairs. A young couple shared a croissant at the window. A college student tapped on a laptop. The barista laughed at something I couldn't hear. This was mine, built not from spite, but from purpose. There was no need for revenge, no need to be loud. The real victory was never about proving Eleanor wrong. It was about proving to myself that I never needed her approval in the first place. Success had been my answer. But peace? Peace was the reward. And as I stepped outside into the autumn sun, my name now my own again, not borrowed, not hidden, I knew one thing for sure. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do is simply not disappear.